I'm home.
Throws to the near side, and that's intercepted. Intercepted by Jack Jones, heading down the near sideline, and this will be a pick six for Jack Jones and a touchdown for Arizona State.
People here, when you think of Sun Devil football, you think of Sun Devil for life.
Here we go, 7 seconds. Berkovici. He's just going to air it out deep downfield, and no white shirts around. Oh, Jalen Strong! Caught for a touchdown! Jalen Strong makes the catch!
I went to Arizona State. Right. I'm a Sun Devil, man.
This is about the Valley. We need the Valley. If we get the Valley all in, the sky is the limit.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe, it is still kind of a quiet time on the football front, our primary focus of this show, but never fear, spring ball is rapidly approaching. Be here in just a couple weeks, and of course, we will be here to get you ready, but it is still a very active time on the Sun Devil sports front. Baseball is underway and off to a hot start. We'll talk about that. But the men's hoops team is facing a crucial stretch to close out the regular season. Their tournament hopes are hanging on by, I would say, maybe a couple threads, but it's a daunting task in front of them. And so we're going to be talking to Kyle Dodd a little bit later to kind of figure out where hoops is at the home stretch.
Yeah, we're in that time of year where, though it seems like it is a collective time to catch breath from what has just been a frantic pace with the football program during the season, and beyond that with everything that was going on, it is still that time of year where you have that crossover, where you've got some of the fall sports that are wrapping it up, or the winter sports, I guess you could call them, into the spring sports. So you have basketball going on the same time as baseball. It's that that few week time where a lot is going on. So even though, as you mentioned, it is a quiet time for the football program, a lot going on elsewhere.
Yeah, and so we will dive into all of that. But first, a thank you to you, the listener, because this show hit a nice round number, milestone, 1 million all-time downloads since we launched episode 1 way back on, I believe, August 25th, 2011. So now that we're now in the 7-digit club, Joe.
Yeah, so, I guess we've got our good buddy Jack Loader on. That's going to spike those ratings through the roof. So probably did 1 million in that show. Him and Willie Bloomquist together. You can't deny that combination. But yeah, it's awesome. That's wow. That's unfathomable. 1 million. It's a big number no matter what it is. So appreciate y'all for sticking around for the ride that it's been so far, and keep sticking around for everything in the future.
All right, so perhaps some other big numbers, hopefully, are in the future for the Pac-12 conference as we brush over a couple of news points before we dive into some of the other sports. The big news today, Apple TV is kind of jumping in to bid or be a bidder amongst the Pac-12's upcoming media broadcast rights. Now, obviously, it's been a kind of an up-and-down situation. Of course, the Big 12 signed their deal not too long ago, leaving the Pac-12 kind of just in a precarious situation, obviously, with the LA schools bolting last summer. That has greatly impacted and complicated matters for the conference. Most recently, Apple, has been the name out there. And I think on some fronts, it's good news in terms of that it's a high-quality product. They've recently been broadcasting Major League Baseball games. They have a Major League Soccer deal. There's been a lot of speculation in terms of whether streaming is kind of the next front of where sports broadcasting is heading. Although sports broadcasting is pretty much the only thing keeping kind of the true linear traditional TV model in place. But I just worry that this, the report today was kind of obviously light on the details. Obviously, these negotiations are still ongoing with a number of potential partners. but I still think you need that linear TV component. You need a broadcast aspect as part of this deal. Now, we should note that Apple does simulcast on Fox part of their Major League Soccer deal, so perhaps that's there. But this just could be a situation where the options are continuing to be limited. We saw that CBS has bowed out of the bidding. Now, whether they were hot in pursuit or serious to what degree remains unknown. But it just, ever since last summer, just the news and the future of this Pac-12, Pac-10 up soon conference seems a little murky.
Yeah, I mean, taking it from the ground up, obviously anything, seemingly literally anything in the world is better than what has been the case for the last, 11, 12 years now. So, anything would be better. My godson broadcasting it with his friends would be better than the Pac-12 network that's existed in its form for the last decade plus. The Apple TV thing could be cool. It's like literally one of the only streaming services I don't have. So wonderful. Yet another one.
You get Ted Lasso too.
Well, no, it seems like a cool product. Though I haven't subscribed to it, I've seen because I have been a subscriber to the MLB season package, and sometimes you can watch the simulcast on that as it is produced through Apple TV. And there's just stuff about it that's cool. Like, it's a unique looking product. The production is a little different than you might be used to. I just remember I was randomly watching some Mariners game, last summer, and I'm like, man, this looks cool. So I think that would be a step up. Like you said, yeah, it would be wonderful for there to be a high level traditional network type of deal, but in reality, this would still help. This would still be better. This is something that this is not my decision. I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a broadcasting network guy. I just don't understand why it's never been an option, that the conference just doesn't come up with it has its network. Why don't you just have a situation where you can launch it as a subscription model in and of itself, not part of a Cox cable package or something like that, but just have it to where you can spend $9.99 or $12.99 or $14.99 or $6.99 or whatever in the world price point it would be to have a Pac-12 network app that you subscribe to, like your Netflixes and your Hulus and your Peacocks and so on, that you just subscribe to that on a monthly basis and you get the content. I feel like that would really up the ante, because you'd have people that would pay. People will pay $10 or so a month for that access. They may not do it year round, but they do it monthly for that access. I would do that. I do not subscribe to the Pac-12 network because I don't want to pay $100+ which would be most cases of a cable package that offers it. So, long-winded response. Again, it would be massively better than has been the case for a decade plus. Is it the best possible option? At least on the surface, maybe not. But is it a realistic option that at least ticks you in a positive direction? I certainly think so.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what direction the conference ultimately goes, and just maybe how out of necessity this is, or if it's perhaps a component of a larger deal, which does include traditional broadcast partners, ESPN or Fox, some form or fashion where you can divide up, the different tiers of broadcasts that we've seen other networks or other conferences go. But Apple, as you mentioned, does put out a quality product, and you can leverage the existing Pac-12 network infrastructure. I mean, to have you have your Ashley Adamsons and your Yogi Roths and all the great broadcasters and the production equipment, which is, I guess, moving out of San Francisco to a more affordable location in the Bay Area. So it'll be interesting to see, if this is, going to be what form or fashion, or, there's been more reporting going out, so that perhaps signals that a deal might be close. And of course, there's always the ongoing expansion talks, whether it's San Diego State and SMU, or just kind of waiting for that announcement to hop on board. We'll see. Figures to be a very active and newsworthy spring across the Pac-12, 10 conference, whatever. We shall see. Although I did see, Matt Brown, one of the National College Football reporters, really kind of dialed in on the business side. Says that, maybe this might not matter too much because this might just be the last deal the Pac-12 ever signs, because you never know. The conference is in a precarious spot, so hopefully George Kliavkoff and the leadership can find a good deal that will solidify the footing for the near and long-term future of the conference. But on a more positive note, Joe, let's talk Sun Devil baseball. As we talked about last week on the show, we talked to Willie Bloomquist, had Jack Loader in studio to break down and preview the season. So far, so good. Devils are 4-0 after tonight's big win over UNLV. They swept San Diego State to open the year. And I think right now the big headline here is, and again, the asterisk, perhaps the competition's not necessarily the Stanfords of the world, but the pitchings look pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, where we are right here, right now, we're recording Tuesday evening, and that ball game went final not terribly long ago, but it is in the books. So the Devils are 4-0, and it's a first opening weekend series sweep for ASU baseball since 2019, when the Devils rattled off nearly 24 consecutive wins that year. Just turning back the clock a little bit to give you a recap, if you didn't happen to tune into what happened in that first weekend of action for the Devils. Opening night was tense. ASU trailed 5-4 heading into the bottom of the ninth, but a Luke Keeschel triple led to tied the ball game rather before Will Rogers won the game with a walk-off RBI single. So a little dramatics in night one, but it turned out as a dub for the Devils. Saturday, a little bit more comfortable, and perhaps more comfortable than the score would indicate. The Devils carried a 5-0 lead into the ninth inning, but allowed 3 runs in that final inning before that 5-3 victory. Sunday, quite a nail-biter. I was out at that ball game, and that's the kind of game that, quite frankly, ASU really hasn't been winning over the last few seasons, as the Devils edged the Aztecs 1-0, naturally with phenomenal pitching leading the way in that shutout. As you talk about, the certain headlining story out of that first weekend was the pitching, especially the starting pitching, as the trio of transfers that we talked about in the last episode, Ross Dunn, Christian Curtis, Timmy Manning, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday starters, combined for 13 and 2/3 innings of scoreless ball for ASU across the weekend. Added to that, a little flash from the bullpen, especially Jesse Wainscott, yet another newcomer to this year's roster. He struck out 6 in 2 1/3 innings on Sunday, earning the win out of the bullpen in what proved to be that narrow 1-0 victory for the Devils. So in those first 3 games, ASU allowed just 7 earned runs, a 2.33 team ERA after those 3 games, and was victorious 6-3 in tonight's action. So we're talking about a dramatic improvement, albeit in a small sample, over last year's ERA, which we know was something astronomical. So again, it's only 4 games so far in that regard, but the pitching proving to be something, again, at least in the sample that we've had, quite a few ticks above what has been the case of recent years.
Yeah, Dunn was not helped by some rough defense behind him early on, but it was kept the Aztecs scoreless, and then Curtis and Manning I thought were really good. Each of them throwing over 5 innings, striking out 6 each, and keeping those Aztecs further off the board on Saturday and Sunday. Wainscott had that weird thing where it's like he plunked the first guy he faced in each of his appearances, but racked up 6 Ks overall as well. We've been kind of lights out, and of course Jack Loader called that one as him being an impact arm off or out of the bullpen. 3 more scoreless innings from a starter tonight as well. So 16 and 2/3 overall through the first 4 games. So Sun Devil starters have not yet given up a run, but in the lineup as well has also seen some guys kind of step up. Luke Hill, for me, the true freshman shortstop, has been really good. He over the weekend he was 4 of 8 with a pair of doubles and RBIs, and tonight actually went a perfect 3 for 3 on the night as well. So showing that the stage isn't too big for the youngster. Wyatt Crenshaw stepping up with McClain out for a while due to the injury, getting some starts. 6 for 10 over the weekend, and he just was inserted into the starting lineup again today. Hit a home run, one of his 2 hits, and 2 RBIs against UNLV. So the kids are pretty good. And, Isaiah Jackson, who missed tonight's game as well with a due to illness, had a home run and that sensational home run robbing catch out in center. It's really, really good. But, the bats you figure are going to come along. But just to see the pitching get off to a good note or, a good start and, after last year's debacle with a lot of newcomers, pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, those are the three names that really had to top the list for anybody watching over the weekend. Hill and Jackson, albeit just freshmen, they looked like veterans out there. Look like they bring swagger to the game, having some fun. You watch Hill out there and you see him get jacked up when the pitcher throws a strikeout. These are just don't look like guys that are in their first couple games at the collegiate level. They have a tremendous level of comfort out there, very confident in what they do. We saw a lot out of Jackson, like you said, that grab he had out in center field on Sunday. Realistically, I mean, in a 1-0 game, it was very early in the game when that happened, but that proved to be a massive difference maker in such a close game. Wyatt Crenshaw, and he's kind of like a similar story to like a lot of these football transfers that are coming in. He played high school ball locally, then played for a few years at Colorado Christian, so not someone that's really topping the list of these marquee D1 transfers that ASU brought in. And as you talked about, not even really a guy that we were speaking about as a starter or a key player entering the season, but the injury with McLean that was a little under the radar. He got inserted in the lineup and just absolutely went on a tear, and that continued tonight. The guy's batting over 500 for these first 4 games, so already looking like he's going to be a key figure in this lineup. And then as tonight's action went on, you started to see some of the returning players, some of the household names get going a little bit. You got home runs for both Ethan Long and Ryan Campos, so that's great to see. As we talked about, Will Rogers was a hero early on. He was someone that, of course, came to ASU with – he was the biggest acquisition as far as recruiting rankings from last year's class, and certainly played a lot and played well, but maybe overshadowed by the likes of Campos and Tobias from the freshman group. So for him to show some flash in his bat, some leadership in these first few games, that's real big. Things are going to continue to pick up. The Devils are going to travel out to Stark Vegas this weekend to face perennial power and 2021 national champion Mississippi State. Then ASU returns to Muni for 5 games next week. Tuesday against High Point, Wednesday against North Dakota State, before a 3-game weekend set against UC Irvine. Brad, if I had to put you under the gun here, where is High Point? I'm not saying this to disparage them as an opponent, but just a little college trivia. I don't know the answer to this.
I've genuinely never heard of them. Denver.
All right, on the spot. Okay, I'm going to say Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm just making that up. Okay, they're from North Carolina.
Oh, geez.
Okay, so High Point, I think it's High Point, North Carolina.
What's their mascot?
Let's take a look here. They have, okay, speaking of Apple, right, they have that Woz guy looking like he, on their website as a commencement speaker. Okay, let's figure this out.
Some live podcasting.
Yeah, we are looking this up right now. High Point.
Yeah, so High Point's going to have, as you mentioned, some of the returning guys, they got to be facing Ethan Long, who, was only 1 for 9 over the weekend, but 2 for 2 tonight with that home run, as you mentioned, and 2 walks. So you got these young kids like the Wyatt Crenshaws and Luke Hills of the world heating up, and you get some veteran bats going along well. The High Point, whatever they're called, are going to be in some rough shape.
So they're the Panthers.
That's pretty generic.
I was hoping that they'd have like a minor league based, banana slugs or something like that. I was
Trash Pandas.
Trash Pandas. My old good buddy, former Sun Devil pitcher Connor Higgins. My man.
He's a trash panda?
He spent some time with them. He's actually in the Diamondbacks organization now. So the guy's moving. High Point, North Carolina. So yeah, High Point University sounds like a generic type of thing. But I guess this is disappointing that it's named after a city and they're the Panthers. They had a lot more potential.
And the elevation of High Point, North Carolina is only 922 feet.
So this is just
not even Phoenix
massive
level.
Conspiracy. It should be medium point. We got a lot of bones to pick with this.
Quite mid.
This new rivalry with High Point University that you can go see in action at Phoenix Muni. Man, I wish I could get out there to Stark Vegas. That would be, because that's as good of a college baseball atmosphere as you can be around, and that's going to be a test. And ASU, Willie Bloomquist is ready for it. Like there's a reason that they're playing out there. He wants to challenge his guys. So it's going to be a great opportunity to see what this ball club is made of. And, it's great that they executed here tonight against UNLV, which is a team that put up – I think I saw that they scored like 31 runs in a game. Okay, I got to validate that. We're flying off the cuff here. But
see, I can't even concentrate now because I'm just just visualizing our listeners hearing this and then heading out to the ballpark on Tuesday and just making the absolute most hostile environment, like U of A level quality hostility for High Point. They come into Muni and they're just confused why Tempe is so hostile towards them, and just I want this movement to grow.
Yes, High Point is we long have debated whether or not Utah is a rival, but we're gonna form solidarity and agreement that High Point is public enemy number 2. Yeah, okay. So opening weekend for UNLV. They played Pacific, which is a team that I've heard of. They won Friday 14-6, Saturday 8-3, and Sunday they won 31-6. And so for them to only score three games against ASU, and God, we're just getting into really weird territory here. I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm showing Brad a visual of this right now. And so they play UC San Diego, which makes sense. They're both in San Diego. I didn't know that UC San Diego's logo is a trident.
Are they different from USD?
Which is just, and I'm looking at the schedule online for San Diego State's website. They have the logos. They have ASU's very nice upward pitchfork that we know, and then they have this modified pitchfork that is kind of like ASU's in a sense for UC San Diego.
High school's change it enough so we don't get sued.
Yeah, so a lot of weird things going on. Baseball is a weird sport, and what I'm glad is not weird. The point I was getting to is that ASU did not overlook UNLV toward this upcoming series out on the road. Took care of business against a team that had been scoring runs, and a team that, from information I saw, very likely from Jack Loader, that they were a pretty high power offense last year. So to allow just the 3 runs, none of them coming from the starters. You got to feel, excited in the small sample so far. We're going to learn quite a bit this weekend, but the way that they've been playing, it's something that you got to be excited about.
Indeed. So ASU, of course, going to be looking to continue the momentum and getting off to this hot start. Hopefully the pitching staff is able to keep things going as they head to Stark Vegas and take on Mississippi State. So before we take a look at where the ASU men's basketball team is at as they are preparing for this critical home stretch, Joe, wrestling. They're wrapping up the kind of the dual season and heading into some bigger things as they're looking to close off the season in a good note.
Yeah, so this I think is this show lends itself to updates on a variety of things like we talked about. Football, we're in that middle ground post recruiting time, pre-signing day, so we can kind of round the bases on a few elements, so to speak. So, as y'all know, big into Arizona State wrestling. So the dual season is over, so what's up ahead is going to be Pac-12 tournament, then the NCAA tournament. So looking back, if you were to take a look at ASU's schedule and results right now, you might be a little miffed. 7-5 is the dual record, and the team record is somewhere in the teens. Again, even if you're a casual Sun Devil wrestling fan, you probably know that ASU has finished with very, very high rankings the last 2 years. So if you see and hear those things, there might be levels of concern. Now, one thing I will say, as was the case last year, this is a team that's perhaps built for tournaments better than dual mates. And if you're not really sure what that means, basically ASU has a few guys that are some of the top performers in the country that when they're in these tournaments, they can win a lot, go far, rack up points. Whereas in dual meets, when it's just 10 guys, going one-on-one, there are some weight divisions that ASU has quite frankly had some struggles, and they lose out on team points there, and things can sway out of their favor. So there were some duels that ASU lost even last year, but was able to get a top 4 ranking yet again. Now, ASU's also had a challenging schedule in its dual meets. 4 teams that ASU has faced are currently ranked in the nation's top 10. 3 of those 5 dual losses were by between 1 and 7 points. And that's where personnel issues have come into play. This has really been a team that has been plagued by some injuries and some other availability issues. Ja'Cory Teamer, he is a 3-time Pac-12 champion. He has missed the entire year. He had a preseason injury, so he's seen no action. That's a guy, you take him out of the lineup. He's one of the best at the 157-pound weight division in the nation. You get him out of there, you just can't replace that productivity. Cordell Norfleet, 4-time Pac-12 champion, senior. He's only appeared in 1 duel this year. Again, injury issues have kept him on the sidelines. Colton Schultz, the national runner-up, he's missed 3 duels. His was not necessarily due to injury, but some availability issues. There's some complexity to it, that he has other commitments with other wrestling that he does where he has to go and compete with different organizations, and it just happens to overlap during the college season. One of those 3 duels that he missed ended up being a 1-point loss at home to Cal Poly. You figure if he if he wrestles that day, ASU isn't going to lose that. So again, not trying to make that injury excuse, but this is just a team that is not fully stocked. It hasn't really been all year. So if we're looking ahead toward the remainder of this season, and how can ASU notch yet another very impressive NCAA finish? So last year, ASU qualified at 7 wrestlers to NCAAs and 8 the year before. As many of you know, or if you don't, the individual conference champion at each weight class gets an automatic NCAA berth, kind of like basketball, where the conference tournament champion, regardless of how they did during the regular season, if they win that conference tournament, they get an automatic berth into the NCAA tournament. And then from there, the rest of the field is filled with at-large bids. Just to put that into context, last year ASU had 6 automatic bids because of 6 Pac-12 champions and 1 at-large bid in Anthony Valencia. So as we enter Pac-12s, which are coming up in a little over a week, ASU has the odds-on favorite, I'd say, to win 4 to 5 weight divisions after claiming those 6 last year. ASU has to be considered the favorite to claim yet another conference title, though Oregon State and Cal Poly have a shot as well. At Pac-12s, ASU stars need to get the job done. We're talking about the Brandon Courtneys, the Mikell McGee's, the Kyle Parkos, Colton Schultz. You need to go out there and take care of business, do what's expected of you. Also, it'd be great to have some solid efforts out of a guy like Kyle Valencia, of course, from the famous Valencia wrestling family. He has really started to gain some momentum in the late stages of the season. He's someone that could potentially make some noise at the 174-pound weight class. Anthony Montalvo, been a little bit up and down, but he has experience, and he's been an NCAA qualifier in the past at 184. If either or both those guys could get some at-large bids or maybe even make a run at Pac-12, that would be huge. So, to me, this year is quite different than last year. It was kind of predictable which ASU wrestlers were going to make noise at Pac-12s. Those 6 individual conference champions by no means were those surprises. I mean, it's difficult to go 6 for 6, and they got it done, but those were the favorites, if you will, heading into it. So, right now where it is, you could have, I'd say, no fewer than 4 NCAA qualifiers, but you get 5, 6, 7. I mean, there's a lot up for grabs there, depending on how the Pac-12 tournament shakes out. So it will be a challenge, I'd say, to claim yet another top 4 NCAA finish, but the possibility is there. The key step, of course, in that mission is to take care of business and to see some upsets in ASU's favor at Pac-12s. And the Pac-12 tournament will occur on Sunday, March 5th at Stanford. Be broadcast on the Pac-12 network starting at 11 a.m. Arizona time. There's an early session, a late session. It's a one-day tournament. It was here last year. I'm telling you, when it works its way back around to Tempe, it's an awesome, awesome thing. A full day of really competitive, hot wrestling. So, again, there have been some ups and downs. We've heard that before in Sun Devil Athletics. Through this season for ASU Wrestling, had to endure some personnel and injury issues. But they are looking to close out on a high note. They've got a lot of experience and talented wrestlers to make this yet another memorable finish at NCAAs for Sun Devil Wrestling.
All right, another squad that is looking to finish on a high note is, of course, the basketball team. Before we talk to radio analyst Kyle Dodd for his expertise and insight, it's worth diving into kind of where this basketball team is after a season of a promising start, but some struggles as of late, Joe. as of right now, 19-9 on the year, 10-7 in the conference. Currently fourth, above that very crucial top 4 line that gets a first round bye in the conference tournament. But the path ahead, it's hard to draw up a more difficult finish. ASU is going to U of A on Saturday. Then next week they go on the road against number 4 UCLA, and then finishing up against the currently 19-8 USC Trojans. Now, it's not so much the difficult finish as well, but it's also that the teams behind them, vying for that first round bye, have it much easier. Now, you look like Utah, who ASU just defeated on Saturday, also 10-7. They finished with the LA Schools and Colorado. But you look one spot behind them, the Oregon Ducks at 9-8 overall in conference play. They finish up with Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford, currently the worst 3 teams in the league. Now, ASU did lose on last Thursday to Colorado, and that was just another one of those painful losses that have kind of come to define these last 10 games for ASU. Just 4-6 over the last 10 in conference play. Just really not a good look, and it really kind of all started when ASU was just a game out, or had a chance to vault to number 1 in the conference. They were leading at home against UCLA at the half. But perhaps in a lot of folks kind of draw this parallel to the 2021 Utah game where ASU was on the road at Salt Lake City. Football team was up 21-7 at the half. Weren't able to close that one out, and just they never looked quite the same. Didn't have that swagger the rest of the way. And so far in the 10 games, since that UCLA kind of second half loss, the basketball team just really hasn't had that same magic that we saw over the first 7 games of conference play.
Under Bobby Hurley, ASU certainly has had a tendency to be streaky, which I think is a shiny way to say, inconsistent, unpredictable, aggravating. They'll surprise you for good or bad. Never really a dull moment. Never feel very comfortable with any sort of lead, no matter what. It is quite the roller coaster. You think back to that 2017-18 season with that incredible start. I mean, that was just the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. I mean, things just got up and then down. This year, however, has just been something wild because you realistically have had 2 phases of things going in a very positive direction and 2 phases of them going in a very negative direction, which is now kind of resulted in this up and down. The non-conference slate, especially before that god-awful San Francisco game, I mean, ASU got into the national rankings and then tipped down and then got things back in a positive direction and then down. And now it's just been kind of this mishmash at the worst possible time. So it really has been, the roller coaster analogy is, of course, overused in sports context, but it's the best way to really describe this season because of the ups and the downs. And it's wild because it's been, one of the better seasons in some context when ASU was on that run of just playing killer defense, and you were seeing different players stepping up on offense, whether it's Des Cambridge or a guy like Frankie Collins against Michigan, or Warren Washington stepping up in a lot of cases. So it's just hard to really nail down the what and the why. The streaky shooting doesn't help. As we'll talk about with Kyle Dodd, ASU has just had this issue where you can't close out games or close out halves, and you have what could be a comfortable lead reduced down to nothing, and just momentum swings seemingly out of nowhere. So, man, it is like I said, tough to really nail down, tough to really put into words. But where it is right now is ASU, still has a shot. They've been competing with a lot of teams. It's difficult to go on the road as they have to go on the road in these last few games, but, they might be able to surprise somebody. They might be able to make a run in the tournament. Then again, they might just lose every game remaining on the regular season slate and go one and done. Like anything is possible. And obviously the looming topic, the elephant in the room, is what, depending on what the outcome is in these next couple of weeks, are we going to see a change at head coach? Is something going to happen where, that is not an issue? There's just a lot up in the air for this program right now.
Yeah, the future of Hurley has been obviously a popular topic for fans, and especially over the last couple seasons, there's been some frustrating stretches. Now, of course, you got to put the whole last 3 years or so into perspective in terms of through the COVID frame of how they were on track to be a third in the tournament for a third straight year before, of course, the pandemic canceled things, but just the up and down of the last couple seasons since then. The way that this season is trending after such a torrid start, where things were looking good, like this was going to be not just a conference contender, but a team that could perhaps make a bit of a run in March. But ultimately, it just like this is, as you mentioned, like the outcomes here. I mean, sure, they're talented enough that if the shooting is on, which it just mostly has not been, ASU is in the 300s nationally in terms of overall field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. But the defense has been good most of the season. That'll keep them in games, but you just don't know if the fan base has kind of run out of patience with Bobby Hurley and this program, and just is it better now than it was 8 years ago? A very plausible scenario is that ASU kind of loses out these next 3 games, hard games on the road, gets a first round victory in the conference tournament before exiting. It's 21 year. So historically, Joe, I mean, a 21 son of a basketball season is pretty good, but at this point, based on what we saw or the early parts and maybe perhaps the mid part of his tenure, and what we've seen since, is that good enough? I mean, has the standard been raised to that point where it's just not going to cut it in Tempe anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because by previous standards, that's certainly a good thing. Now then, you look at within the context of the season itself, and when you start as hot as you do and end as you did, and for it not to be the first time where that sort of thing happens, let's say, ASU wins like 1 game of its next 4, wherever that lies, doesn't do any major noise. That's again similar thing to what we saw in 2017 and 18, where you get into like the top 3 national ranking, and then you end up in the playing game and don't win that, don't do anything within the conference realm. So I think it's just kind of a tease in a sense to be able to bring in talented players. You bring in a 4-star freshman like Austin Nunez, and you bring in transfers that are really making a mark. You get to the point you're in the top 25, in the month of December, and things, fall away from there. It's also kind of like, it's not terribly dissimilar to, a guy like Todd Graham, who I felt was a victim of his own success in the means that he raised the bar for the program so quickly in his first 3 years that became a measure that was unsustainable for him, and not to sustain that success was his undoing. So for someone like Bobby Hurley, it's been odd because there certainly hasn't been that season that is comparable to like ASU's 2013 South Division title and winning 10 games back to back for football. That hasn't been the case because the most that's happened is a early round entry into the NCAA tournament, or some I think the farthest in the Pac-12 tournament I think is maybe to the semifinal game if I'm not mistaken. So not these big time runs, but these little incremental ones. Of course, like we talked about, you have that the 2017-18 season that started so hot. You have the 19-20 season that, if not for the COVID shutdown, that ASU was poised to potentially make a run as well. So a lot of what ifs, what could have beens. So it is very, very perplexing because it does on one hand seem odd that the conversation would be had to move on from Bobby Hurley because of the fact that he has elevated the recruiting and elevated really the expectations of this program. But when you look at the bottom line results in tournament appearances and finishes within the conference, that's something that just hasn't necessarily progressed at a level beyond what his predecessor did. So it's really a unique thing to analyze, and needless to say, one heck of a lot is going to be on the line for these final stretch of games, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, this year's squad would just seem to have perhaps the best mix of backcourt talent with some size. Warren Washington has played really well this season. Duke Brennan has emerged as a viable youngster that can provide some good minutes in the post, some talented wings, and of course all of this has been done without perhaps their most talented player, Marcus Bagley, being a non-factor for pretty much the entire season. So you just wonder whether this is a program that is better off. I mean, the recruiting is better, but ultimately you're in a situation where you're still second fiddle in the state in basketball. The Wildcats, suffered through their change of coach and Sean Miller, but you can put suffering in quotes because obviously they're one of the elite teams in the country and one of the contenders for the national championship. But ASU has not been able to really kind of take advantage of the Wildcats, kind of dip. Just kind of like how ASU football was not really able to take advantage of USC's struggles on the football field. So it's just real frustrating in that respect if you're an ASU fan. And then you look at just overall at, through 8 years, and as of this moment, he's 137 and 109, but with a 70 and 74 conference record. And just, 2 NCAA tournament appearances over that time. Obviously, it would have been 3 straight had the pandemic not happened, but you just got to go with what you're dealt. And it's just the consistency hasn't been there. Now, whether that they can shake off the malaise of these last 10 games and put everything together and make a run, we'll see. Because they've certainly flashed that potential this year. But I don't know. I know that it seems like a lot of fans are kind of really reached the breaking point. Perhaps a hot finish and a good tournament run could get things back on track. They do have some talented guys, obviously some talented youth that we'll talk about, but also some commits or some signees rather that could help in future years. But this is for a lot of folks that they've seen this song played out a number of times already, and whether they want to sit through another encore beyond this 2022-2023 season, well, we'll see. But, I mean, a lot is going to hang in the balance over what happens over these next couple weeks.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, there has been quite a bit of elevation. I mean, a lot of us remember days for ASU basketball where, it was pretty grim. And, there were some tournament appearances in the Rob Evans days. Just about every coach kind of got one up. Frieder had his Sweet 16 years, and then of course Sendek and James Harden, and even after he was gone, had some success as well. But there were a lot of times, a lot of years, prior to Bobby Hurley's arrival, over that first decade and a half of this century, where there wasn't really much buzz about the program. The fan turnout wasn't that outstanding. Again, there were certainly exceptions to that. But things got turned around in a major way in that regard. It's not quite as good as it was. I think every ASU and the fan aspect for basketball, like after COVID, like it never seemed to really consistently get back to where it was before that. You were seeing large crowds for what were, pretty pedestrian opponents and that sort of thing. And obviously the big games, the huge games, I mean, those got to be public spectacles. So I think just the fan engagement is at a higher level. But like I said, it's something where, these coaches can oftentimes become victims of their own success, to where when they raise things up one notch or a couple notches, if they don't continue to raise the bar, or if they have difficulty even maintaining that status quo, fans have it's a short-term memory situation, and it's a what have you done for me lately situation. And I get it. It's big money. It's big business. It's college athletics. So folks aren't really thinking about that Kansas win when, Rob Edwards made some big shots against the number 1 team in the country, because that seems like forever ago. Focused on the here and now. So it is an odd sort of deal. Again, it really, the more that I kind of talk it through and think it through, it's something that reminds me of a Todd Graham type of situation, because there was a time that, there are a lot of similarities, really, if you think about it. There was a time many of us were thinking, man, Texas is going to poach Todd Graham from ASU. Or, hey, if he wants to be, Todd Graham's going to be here for 20 years, and he's going to be the next, Frank Beamer, Bobby Bowden. And then look what happened with him. Bobby Hurley, how much fear was there that Duke was going to hire him to, take after, to follow after Coach K? Or that he could, make a niche and be here for 10, 15, 20 years and be, maybe not a lifer, but a very, very long timer. These things, the narrative and the options, things can change in a hurry. So it's odd, just like it was odd in the late days of Todd Graham's tenure of never really thought we'd be here, but it kind of makes sense to be here now. Where you are with Bobby Hurley is kind of in that same spot. A guy you thought was going to be here for a very long time. Now the mortality of his coaching career at ASU has fallen into question. And it's not, this is not a eulogy for Bobby Hurley's career here, but it's just a reality of the situation that if things, really skid out of control here in these last few games, and once again, it's a tough stretch they're going to face, then that conversation is going to be there among the fan base and, could be a legitimate topic behind closed doors as well. It has been an up and down season, to say the least, for Sun Devil basketball this year. And as things wind down in the regular season and the Devils prepare for the Pac-12 tournament here before too long, let's try to make as much sense as possible of what's been going on as we welcome back our guy, KD, Kyle Dodd, making what is probably a chart-topping performance to break him into one of the higher ranks of all-time guests. Am I mistaken?
This is his 11th appearance, breaking a tie with Matt Berry. So congratulations.
Let's go. I thought I broke a tie last time I came on, and then I don't know when you guys had Matt on, but it pissed me off. So now I'm breaking the tie. I'm definitely tweeting this.
There we go. The epic battle. The internal struggle continues. So now before we talk about the season, you've had to roll with some punches of late in your role on the broadcast, which unofficially, as I've been told, is very likely to come to an end here this soon, thank the Lord. My dad is, of course, good old Tim Healy, voice of Sun Devils, has had to miss a handful of games due to illness, like I said, hoping that streak ends here very soon. What's it been like? You've had to work with some new voices, some old voices filling in. What's that been like for you professionally, just to kind of have to roll those punches these last handful of games?
It's, I've done it before just during football season when your dad has to miss, and it's obviously never fun to not be with my boy. But it's different. It's just kind of, different things, different people provide different things. So I love working with Munn, who obviously is a true pro, just like your dad. And I've known Money for a while. And then, a couple times I've gotten to work with the students, Cronkite guys, and, just to see them and kind of the bright future that they had. And, I never like to be without Tim, but we make it work. We try to make him proud and then, do the best we can. But I did talk to him. Pretty much talked to him every day since this whole thing went down. I told him, don't test again. Once you're negative, stop testing. So, because, for me, he's obviously, he feels fine. And, first and foremost, we were worried, making sure he's felt healthy and stuff. And knowing that he feels good enough to do the broadcast for me personally, and Sean Crespin, our engineer, and anybody else, that's going to be around him, we feel good. I think I worried him a little bit because he texted and said, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm in. Are we good to drive down on Saturday together? Or are you guys, would you rather me, follow you guys? And I just said, my message back was, that would be uncomfortable. And then I just let it hang for a couple minutes. And I said, what did I say? That would make me uncomfortable. And then I let it hang. And then I said, you riding behind us. I'm like, let's go. Healy's back, so, and we chatted for a long time. So nothing like, the voice of the Devils being back, and especially for the rivalry game. So
I'm sure I'm sure that went over real well. So, yeah, as you were saying, I don't know if it's my or our news to break, but every expectation is that he should be back there on the mic for that huge game in Tucson coming up here in a handful of days. Yep.
All right, Kyle. So obviously this team got off to a really hot start, and especially in conference play, 6-1. But in the 10 conference games since, just 4-6. What are you feeling is kind of the biggest reasons behind that? The recent 10-game kind of slide compared to the very hot start that we saw.
I think it's a couple things. I mean, I really thought, going into the UCLA game, we're talking about the biggest home game in the league in years, playing for first place on the line. 6-1, one of the best starts, like I said, in 40 years, and you play or outplay that opponent for 37 minutes, and they take over at the end, kind of wear you down. It's a team that's played together for a couple of years. Their core has, and they won that game. In my opinion, they won that game because they're veterans, and they played in the Final Four, and they played a little bit better down the stretch. Then you fast forward, and I think UCLA beat you 3 more times, if that makes sense. I feel like ASU was just so invested in that game, and it was just such a great atmosphere. And then we had such a letdown against USC. And don't get me wrong, SC is a very talented team and as good as anybody in the league when they played together and whatnot. But obviously you lose that game, and now you're feeling down about getting swept at home. And we played not well at all at Washington. Still had a chance to win, found a way to stay in that game, lose in overtime. Now you're deflated. Then you have to make the trek to Pullman, of all places, and kind of a day game there. And it just was one of those things where I really felt like UCLA beat us 4 times. And you lose 4 games in a row, and you come home, you're trying to get it right. And they did get it right Thursday night against Oregon State. Come out, play pretty good against Oregon, get a horribly officiated second half, kind of got them off the rails, lost that game. And it was just like a combination, a bad couple weeks. And then you think they get it right again, they get back, you get another road sweep, which road sweeps in the Pac-12 are very rare, our second one of the year. And then, come home and just kind of let one get away against Colorado. So it's just, to me, it's just been a little bit of a stretch where I think they're trying to figure out and get back to who they were at the beginning of the year. And I think they're still the same basketball team, still the great kids, still get after it on the defensive end. I just think, maybe lacking a little bit of confidence or swagger, whatever you want to call it, over the last couple of weeks.
Now, obviously, this year's team is really good on the defensive end. Obviously, a lot of energy and putting the clamps down on a lot of the opponents, which is really helpful because the offense is continuing to struggle. ASU is ranked in the 300s in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. Not a lot of the advanced metrics, not too friendly either. This has kind of been a common through line and a common fan complaint over the last couple of years. Why do you feel that the consistency on the offensive side of the floor has been kind of an issue for Coach Hurley's teams over these last couple seasons?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's interesting because the way they guard and how hard they play on the defensive end, I think sometimes affects them on the offensive side of things. When they're going well and they're getting turnovers and they're getting out, you'll see dunks, you see lobs. I mean, that was the kind of moniker of Lob U. And they're getting out and they're playing athletically and using their length, and that's really their strength. Good half-court team, and they're not a great shooting team. So, I think when they get in the half-court, their offensive struggles have been, visible. But I don't think it has anything to do with the system. I think it's honestly just when guys are making shots. I mean, DJ Horn shot the heck out of it last year. He's been a little bit more up and down this year. Des Cambridge is a guy that has made shots everywhere he's gone. And when those 2 guys are making shots, we can beat anybody in the country. If they're not, it's a real struggle sometimes from the outside. So, like I said, I don't think that it's anything to do with the system Bobby runs. I mean, I hear it all the time, and I laugh because it tells you who knows hoops and who doesn't know hoops. But I mean, everybody's like, we don't run, we don't do this, we don't run this offense. And well, I mean, guys, when Bobby first got here, we led the league in scoring multiple years in a row. I mean, so the problem isn't being able to score the basketball. Now, yes, this is a challenge for this particular team, but it's not necessarily, like I said, what he's running. And if you pay attention and you know basketball at all, watch any out of timeout or after halftime or any set that they run that's a set play. He's as good as anybody in the league or country. And ATOs, which are after timeout plays. And, I mean, he knows his stuff. So it's not an issue with coaching in a sense. I just think sometimes this year, personnel-wise, we're not shooting the ball well or as well as maybe some of us thought we would.
So now on more than one occasion this year, we've seen things like slow starts or some dysfunction at the end of the first half or at the end of the game. Like you think about that San Francisco game that was kind of over just basically after tip-off. The Colorado game last week fell apart in real short order. So we've seen spurts that are maybe short in time but really cause a lot of issues in the win-loss column. What do you think creates those circumstances where the team maybe loses focus or maybe stumbles out of the gates and suffers these issues again that may not occupy a ton of time but really impact the team in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird because as long as I've been around ASU as a player, as a coach, as an announcer, I could tell you it doesn't matter who it is, what team it is. I just feel like for whatever reason we had trouble when I was there closing out halves or closing out games and trouble. I know Herb had his issues, and this team this year just for whatever reason the end of the halves, like it just seems like the Oregon game was a huge one. I mean, we were up 6 with the basketball, get a turnover, we go down, try to throw a lob, turn it over. Rather than even if you just run out the clock there, you're still up 6, and we had all the momentum in the world. They come down, hit a 3, and it was just like, and then and it's like that feeling. The crowd knows it, everybody knows it. Oh, here we go again. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's anything obviously the players are trying to do. Or I mean, you'll see coach call a timeout, set something up. He'll, whatever it is. It's just for whatever reason, it's been a little bit of an issue just finishing halves or whatever. But yeah, it's been tough because those are a couple games I think that really got away from us. I mean, outside, I think the Colorado game, we led 33 minutes of that game, and you take away the last couple minutes of the first half and the last couple minutes of the game, and we really by far were the better team. It's crazy how small the margin of error is.
So now, even though there have been highs and lows for the team in this season as a whole, everyone's got to be happy with the collective play of this crop of transfers that came in this year. Cambridge brothers, Warren Washington, Frankie Collins. We'll talk about the freshmen here in a moment, but all in all, what has stood out to you about this group of transfers that came in at the beginning of this year? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's probably one of the more fun groups of kids that I've been around since I've been doing this, and which is kind of ironic because in the world we live in now, you're only seeing these guys for a year. And when I first started doing this, you had 4-year players, and that just doesn't happen anymore. But this particular group, I just seeing them at breakfast, seeing them on the bus. I mean, I feel like they really like each other. They trust each other. They're winners, man. I mean, the Cambridge brothers, they lay it on the line. And Warren Washington's just a great kid and a winner. And I'm rooting for them so bad to get this going here at the end because they've built. We're 19-9 and have 10 wins in the Pac-12. And if you told me at the beginning of the year, this is where we're at in this point of the season, I'd probably take it. But now knowing how we got here and what's happened over the last couple of weeks, whatever, yeah, it's been a little bit up and down and frustrating, but it's a good group of kids. They've really, to me, the comparison to last year, you add 9 new kids last year and they never really quite clicked and trusted each other till the end of the year. And a lot of that had to do with COVID and interruptions and whatnot. But at the end of the year, they were rolling. Man, nobody wanted to play us last year. If you guys remember, I think we ended up going 10-10 in the league. We won a bunch of games at the end of the year. Now, this is a group that I think clicked and gelled together very early and probably faster than we expected. And then now they've had some growing pains in the middle part. So, I really like the group. Like I said, I think these transfers have been awesome. And it's sad, like seeing him on senior day, and it's like I'm watching the Cambridge brothers. It's just like Zylan Cheatham a couple years ago, or Rob Edwards, or anybody. It's like, man, I want those guys to wear maroon and gold a couple more times, a couple more years, you know?
Now, looking at some of those guys who have the ability to wear that maroon and gold a couple more years, a pair of true freshmen that really jumped out with their play. What is kind of your impression so far of what you've seen from Austin Nunez and Duke Brennan?
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, two guys that flat out lay it on the line every night. They step on the floor, tough, huge stones, man. These guys, I mean, Austin Nunez is a guy that I think could probably add a little bit more on the offensive end if he really, you know, I think he's just filling a role right now, picking his spots, you know, trying to take a back seat to some of the older kids on the offensive side. But this dude flat out guards every time he steps on the floor, competes every time he steps on the floor, and he's been huge. And Duke is, I mean, no secret, Duke from day one was a crowd favorite because he's gonna get good after every offensive rebound. He's gonna get on every loose ball. He's gonna dive on the floor. He's gonna do all those things. And yeah, does Duke take a couple fouls because he goes over the back, you know, 80 feet from the basket? You probably don't want him to take, but you can live with that type of stuff because he's just such a good, hard-nosed competitor. And, you know, I think these kids would love to have them hang around for a couple of years because these kids are both, you know, I think they both represent what any of us fans or, you know, people that are just watching, you know, would want to represent our school.
So where do you think this team is mentally right now? Of course, up and down year in a few ways. Team has its back against the wall. You know, a tough road ahead for the end of the regular season, and then the conference tournament is always a challenge. Where are these guys in terms of focus entering this very crucial final stretch?
I think they're good. I mean, I saw it Saturday. I was a little worried because, you know, there were stretches of that game Saturday where I'm like, man, you know, are they going to just think, oh, man, you know, I really felt like over the really tough stretch, they almost you could tell in their body language, we let a really good season slip out of our hands, or, you know, I just could tell they weren't the same confident group. And then they've gotten that back in a couple sequences recently. And I saw that Saturday late in the game. I was like, I could tell. I look out there and I was like, those guys were like, no, we ain't losing this game. This is not happening again. Colorado's not happening again. And they took the game from Utah just purely by wanting it. And that's why I won't count these guys out. I know, yes, 3 games on the road at Arizona, UCLA, USC, toughest games of the year by far. But that's a great opportunity to get a resume building win, you know, and if they could get 1 or 2 of these, that would be huge. But I'm not going to bet against them. I will tell you that, because I just think that they're a good group of kids, like I said, and they're not going to fold. They're not going to go down and be scared of the moment in Tucson or scared of UCLA or scared of USC. So I would love for them to get wins. And really, they've put themselves in a crazy position, like a good position going into the Pac-12 tournament. Worst case scenario, best case scenario. Best case scenario, you get a bye. Worst case scenario, you're sitting there at that. If you get that 5 seed, I promise you, we can talk about that later. But that's not a bad place to be as far as you know, moving on in the weekend.
Now, of course, as you mentioned, this home stretch starts with the Devils going to the belly of the beast down in Tucson. You know, from your own playing days, what do you remember? What's that environment like? How daunting of a road atmosphere is that? And, you know, what are some of your most vivid memories of your games down there against the Cats?
I mean, to be honest with you, I played when I was in the league. Arizona was probably the 5th or 6th, like, hardest place to play, in my opinion. And not because they didn't sell out every game and the fans weren't crazy, but it was more of like an NBA crowd. And I say that because at the time, Stanford was number 1 in the country. Maples Pavilion, 7,000 seats compared to 14,000. It was right on top of you, insane. Oregon played in the Pit. They didn't play in Matthew Knight Arena. It was a small little theater, loud. I mean, the loudest place I've ever been in. Cal was really good. And Cal, the acoustics in Haas Pavilion was insane. And, I mean, Oregon State, I mean, like, all these places it's different now. And, that being said, I mean, it's a rivalry game. the crowd's nuts down there. Obviously it's their NBA team. And now, I mean, to me, it's the hardest place to play in the league by far because of, nobody else does what they used to do. And I think they do a good job, obviously, down there of, packing the building every time you go down there. And it's different. You don't have like a huge young presence, young, crazy fan presence. You got more of the older crowd but they say the nastiest things you could imagine to you. So it's a great environment, and I mean, I would never admit this to anybody, but I would love for that to be my home crowd every game,
Now, as you mentioned, it's going to be pretty daunting. You have the trip to Tucson, then at UCLA, at USC, and then opening up the tournament. What do you feel ASU needs to do over those final 3 regular season games and then in the Pac-12 tournament for the Devils to be able to kind of feel good about their chances at making the dance?
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. Like, I was looking at it today, and I'm looking at stuff, and I mean, I have no idea how a 15-13 Oregon team, is that much higher than us, or 11-16 Ohio State. 11-16 Ohio State team is higher than us in the NAT rankings. So it doesn't make sense to me all the way through, but just knowing kind of the system, I think they have to try to find a way to get one of these next 3. I mean, they'd love to get all 3, and I think that's their plan, but let's be realistic here. So if they could get one, and if say they slide into that 5 seed in the Pac-12 tournament, I don't think that's really terrible because you got 5 would be play the 12 on day 1, which you're playing Cal, and we know Cal. It's not to say that Cal can't beat anybody on any day, but they have 3 wins this year. So you would assume that that's a winnable game, and then the next game you would stay by being the 5 seed. You'd play the 4 seed, which would be you'd stay away from UCLA and Arizona. So the next day you play probably so you're not the 4 seed. That would mean Oregon or Utah is the 4 seed, and we beat Oregon by 30 at their place or 20 at their place, and we just beat Utah. I mean, so we know that's a winnable game. So now you're talking, you win one of those last 3, you get a couple wins in the Pac-12, you're sitting there at 22 wins. I mean, 22 wins is a good season. I don't know where that would leave you. It kind of depends on how everything else plays out. But I guess to answer your question simply is I think if they could find a way to get three more wins the rest of the way, I think they'd put themselves in a position where they're back in the mix, at least.
So obviously, as you just outlined, the road is there, the talent is there, and the winnable games are there in front. But this team started off 15-3 and 6-1 in conference play. If they somehow don't make the NCAA tournament, what impact do you think that might have on kind of the near-term future of the program?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's no secret it would be disappointing because, I mean, you look back 5 weeks ago and you would have said that essentially they're a lock for the tournament. But it's kind of ASU luck. I mean, I know we all talk about it and stuff, but the Michigan win. You go and beat the brakes off of Michigan in Brooklyn. You think later in the year that's going to be a heck of a resume builder, a resume win. Creighton was a top 10 team. They went in Vegas, beat them. VCU beat them, beat Oregon, and it's just like now it's just they played everybody that was in front of them. They got some good wins. Yes, they had a couple. They had Texas Southern and at San Francisco were bad losses. I mean, we can say that. Texas Southern, no business losing that game. San Francisco, good basketball team on the road in a small gym. Can't get beat by what they got beat by. But, all that said, overall, I mean, it's been a good year. It really has, and it's a good basketball team. And, I mean, like I said, just for me, I watch a lot of college hoops, and you can't tell me an 11-16 Ohio State team is ranked higher than us in the net rankings. I'm sorry, that's absurd.
Well, KD, my man, we always appreciate you. We're glad to get you another rung up on the ladder, the all-time guest list. I'm sure everybody's following him on Twitter, but if you aren't already, it's at K_Dodd3. Welcome back, my old man in style this weekend with the big win, my brother.
Yeah, it'll be great to have Tim. We'll we'll try to get it done. It would be awesome. I've gotten one win all my time of coaching, playing, and announcing. I got one win there, and walking out of that building after a win and watching all those people walk out of there miserable was one of the highlights since I've been at ASU. So it'd be awesome to do it again Saturday.
All right, my friend. Well, a lot left to be played for this season, and we'll certainly catch up down the road to talk some Sun Devil hoops, my man. One of our sponsors, and we plan to feature them all over the coming weeks and months. As I'm sure y'all know by now, these 6 sponsors we have are deeply dedicated to ASU and Sun Devil athletics, so many of their stories are similar to yours as lifelong Sun Devils. In these spotlight segments, we'll get a little background on the people behind these businesses and their favorite memories as Sun Devil fans. Now, rest assured, this isn't some glorified commercial or ad space, but a chance to get to know a little more about these individuals and businesses who have kindly and generously supported us through the years. Up first, a guy with a known passion for Sun Devil athletics, a passion so deep he carried the pitchfork as Sparky the Sun Devil during his days at ASU. Now he runs Spaghetti Shack, which we've been proud to partner with since they opened their doors in Tempe. Welcome aboard our good friend, Joey Palomarez. Joey, welcome to the show, my man.
Hello. Good to be here, guys. I really appreciate you having me.
All right, so obviously anybody knows that you've been a Sun Devil since birth. So give our listeners kind of a background about your ASU fandom. You know, what started you on the path to being a Sun Devil, and what are some of the earliest memories of your time as an ASU fan?
Yeah, I mean, great question. It's always fun to think about where it all started. But so my dad was a huge ASU fan. He just passed away about a year ago. So, tough time in terms of whenever I go to ASU, I think about him. But I've had football season tickets since I was 3 years old. I grew up going with him, going to games, tailgating, going down, just experiencing, football at ASU. And we did baseball and basketball, but, football was always our first love. That's grown into something more basketball related. But, I grew up around it. My dad actually never got his degree from ASU, so that was one thing that I always wanted to do for him, was to get my degree there. So I've been going to games since I was 3, and very fortunate that in 2020 I graduated with a degree and can call myself a Sun Devil alum. But yeah, you're right. It has been since birth, really.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I think back to it because I remember just Facebook groups and things like that when you're still in high school or maybe even younger, and then it's just the years go on and it develops. So
a funny story on that though. So just the cool stuff, and I guess I used to like to brag about this a lot, but when my parents got divorced and I was 13, I needed to make some money to buy my own season tickets. So I worked at my grandma's house every day for a summer, and she gave me like $10 a day to do chores, just teenager stuff. But it was really cool because I don't know who I was talking to, the Sun Devil Club at the time, but I technically was a Sun Devil Club member at 13 with my own season tickets. So everybody always said that I was the youngest Sun Devil Club member ever at the time. Now I'm sure people have gotten memberships for their kids and stuff, but it was really cool to, be 13-year-old and have my little Sun Devil card. And, when I was 16, I had my Sun Devil Club member on the back of my vehicle, because it was something when I was a kid that none of my friends could say. You know what I mean? So it's just a fun little thing I think back on.
So when you get out of high school, it came time for you to attend ASU. You weren't just there as a student or a fan, but you became Sparky. I'm sure our listeners are going to love to hear about that. How did that opportunity come to be for you? What are some of the highlights, favorite memories you have from your time as ASU's mascot? I know that at the time you couldn't reveal your identity, so what was it like to be Sparky?
Yeah, being Sparky was incredible. Not as glamorous as everyone thinks it is, but there were some pretty incredible moments. But I actually just kind of lucked out and fell onto that team. Yes, I mean, I grew up, I was Sparky for Halloween like a lot of us were, but I never really thought about actually being Sparky. One of my friends that I went to high school with was on the team, and I guess that they had a bunch of guys quit mid-year. So I really actually joined my sophomore year. He asked me to come out and just help with baseball. So they just threw me in the suit one day. I didn't even try out, but he knew that I had been watching Sparky forever. So they just threw me in a suit at a tennis match versus U of A, and I, obviously wasn't great when I first got in there, but I kind of knew what I was doing, and they asked me if I wanted to stay on, and I said sure. But being Sparky is really, really cool because what people don't realize is you're no longer yourself, you're somebody else. It is as close to acting as you could possibly get. Sparky has his own persona. Sparky has his own personality. He has his own mannerisms. And I'm very passionate about when Sparky is not portraying those mannerisms how I believe that they should be per the handbook or whatever. But, we got to – everybody who's worn that suit, who's carried that pitchfork has been that. And, it's a cool little fraternity, as we call it in the mascot community, although Sparky doesn't have any fur. But, no, some great memories. I got to do the comeback down in Tucson. So being on the field for that, there's some pretty great videos of me taunting some people in the stands after we won. Or me running around, and for my last game in Tucson or in Tempe was the U of A game, and I actually got to hold the cup in front of the student section. So the U of A games were probably my favorite memories. I got to be Sparky at the LA Coliseum against USC. I got to be Sparky at the Sun Bowl. I did a Pac-12 women's basketball tournament. Games where we beat U of A in basketball, stuff like that. So great memories. And to be honest, like I always say, it wasn't as glamorous. I can't tell you. You guys think that football is bad. Those Sunday, May, June baseball games when it's 110 outside are no fun. But at the time, I was really ready to hang it up, and sometimes I wish I could just get back in one more time.
Yeah, no, I can tell. I've been out just as a fan, wearing a tank top in some of those Sunday day baseball games. I can't imagine in full Sparky regalia. Now, that wasn't the only key experience that you had during your time as a student. Talk about what you did with the 942 crew.
Yeah, so I was in the 942 crew. I was one of those 5-year college people. I just couldn't leave ASU, so I was in there for 5 years.
Hey, man, same here. So,
so it took me a little bit to get my degree, but I got involved with the 942 crew really early on my freshman year. I did a lot of things, running their social media when I was in school. I was able to, serve as the intern, as we call it. So basically, I helped with Bill Kennedy run the group for 2 years. So I was super involved, and I think the one thing that I just want to use this time to do is just talk about all the people who spent their college careers focusing on building a student experience at ASU that is really unmatched across the country. The way that we were able to get students for all of our varsity sports, not just football and men's basketball, is really cool. And to be able to create those amazing experiences, like when people think of the Kansas game, when people think of like these games, they think of how the students were at those games, and to be able to be a small part of that was really cool.
So one quick follow-up. How well ventilated is the Sparky suit for those, those late spring baseball games?
It's pretty awful. So I will say I have had the privilege of putting on different suits at different events. So I have worn the Oregon Duck. I have worn Benny the Beaver. I have been able to, do that kind of thing and have some fun. And they have it a lot worse than us. But no, it's not good. I did hear that recently they tried. And if you look at the seat now, I think that there's some ventilation holes around the neck. But those were not there when I was in the suit.
So obviously, it's not every day that a relatively new college grad just goes kind of directly into business ownership. So tell us, how did you get involved with your business, and why is the Spaghetti Shack concept the direction that you chose to go?
Great question. To be honest, I am a second-generation restaurateur, so I grew up in the restaurant industry. My parents have restaurants out in Queen Creek where I grew up, so I've been bussing tables since I was 12 years old. Oh, I'm sorry. I got my dog's going crazy over here. But no, so I've been in the restaurant industry my whole life. And to be honest, I told myself that I was never going to do it. It was a lot of work. I did all the unglamorous jobs. I bushed tables. I did dishes. So, but I graduated into COVID. So I didn't really know what I really wanted to do. My buddies and I, we had our first big boy jobs, and we got some stimulus checks and things like that. So I wasn't very, happy with mine. So I came up with the idea with my buddies. I own this business with 4 of my best friends since high school, 2 of which are Sun Devils. One was a Sun Devil student athlete on the track team. But we just decided that we wanted to give a restaurant a go. We looked around, and there was a couple other concepts we liked, but we really couldn't just vibe with it. So we decided to, instead of franchise, open our own shop. So the Spaghetti Shack was born that way. And the big thing for us is it's just like, spaghetti is something that everybody likes, and it's something that kids like and parents like, and we want to be able to serve people great food affordably because everything is so dang expensive nowadays. So we're a quick service concept that focuses on affordability. But I guess I was born to do it, even though I didn't really think I was ever going to. But yeah, that's how I ended up here.
So now I know this from personal experience. Business ownership and operation, very demanding, and I'm sure especially so in this post-pandemic world. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced and most significant lessons you've learned these early stages that you've run with Spaghetti Shack?
To be completely honest, and especially in the food space, it's just very, very hard to break through the noise. Think about every single time that you have driven down the street and like, I'm hungry. The first thing that comes to the mind are the big brands that spend millions and billions of dollars on advertising. So, they're in your face constantly, whether you're on social media or talking to your friends. It's big brands, Chipotle, Jack in the Box, yada, yada, yada. So to be able to be an independent restaurant and break through that noise is very, very difficult. And so it's something that we've had to learn how to do, and we've come up with our own strategies and ways of approaching business. And, our, business is very community focused, to be honest, because we want to build meaningful relationships with members in the community instead of just serving food.
Now, of course, like in life and sports, the challenges are worth it when you're able to get those wins and those victories. What have been some of the most rewarding experiences that you've had as a business owner?
Good question. I got a couple. I mean, obviously opening my doors for the first time and serving those first customers, and that was a pretty awesome experience to be able to have somebody come into your place and leave happy and be able to connect over your food on their dinner table is a pretty cool experience. So, I mean, obviously opening my doors has been one. On a weird Sun Devil note, doing our NIL deal with Case Hatch was really cool for me because to be able to see how the Sun Devil community rallied around our business, because we were rallying around the Sun Devil community, was really cool. To be able to kind of put ourselves out there as a Sun Devil owned business was really rewarding. And then now it's just every good review. Every single time we get a 5-star review, I smile. Every single time I get a text from one of my friends or I get a call from somebody that says that they went to the Spaghetti Shack, it brings a little smile to my face because in business and in life, sometimes you just got to enjoy the little wins. So every sale, every good review, every good customer interaction is something I try at least to smile and laugh at.
So you've mentioned a few times here recently about the importance of being active in the community. Your business does quite a few things when it comes to being involved in just the local community and, of course, the Sun Devil community as well. So as a business owner, why is it important to you to give back to the community, again, especially that ASU community?
Yeah, I mean, the best way for me to put it, and I know it sounds weird sometimes, is like we are a community-minded business. Our whole, not only our strategy, but our whole way of existing is revolved around our community. I told you a little bit about like our model is feeding people affordably so they can spend less time with their doing dishes and cooking and more time with their family and loved ones. So it makes most sense for us to work and do good work in the community. We have a community partnership program where we partner with different businesses and nonprofits in the community. I serve spaghetti and meatballs for a living, but if I can serve that spaghetti and meatballs with a great message, that's what I want to do. So we've been able to do some good fundraising efforts, and we've been able to, be a good standing piece of the community. And then if you want to talk about ASU in general, ASU is the place that shaped me, and I want to be able to give back in every way that I can. If we're talking about sports, I know there's been a lot of talk around activating the Valley and activating ASU, and I personally don't have the money to give thousands and thousands of dollars to the university, but what I can do is I can donate food product, or I can do a small NIL deal, and I can do things to support the program with the unique position of having a business that I can. And Sun Devil athletics and football and basketball are legitimately one of the biggest parts of my life. So if I can do out there and help us be better, then that's what I want to do. But lastly, and when it talks about the community is only as strong as people who work together. So if I can work together with other people supporting other businesses, that's the only way that our community is really going to be able to come together, is if we work together. So that's just what we try to push forward, and I think that we've done a really good job at that. And every day we find new ways to portray that community value. Now,
speaking of activating the Valley, what are your thoughts on the Kenny Dillingham hire for Sun Devil football. Obviously, he has a high priority on just the state, the community, and getting fans and local businesses involved with Sun Devil athletics. So obviously that checks a lot of boxes with you as an alum, a fan, and a local small business owner. So how do all his priorities kind of resonate with you?
Guys, I am jacked. I am excited. I am ready for this. I am a basketball first guy. I will not lie, but I do the football. I of course do football. I tailgate. I travel on the road, and I haven't been this excited in a long, long time. And I think the way I'll sum this up and my feelings about this is I was listening to one of those Twitter Spaces one day, and Ralph. It was right around when they announced the hire, and Ralph Amsden said, the first thing I saw when I listened to that press conference, and the first thing I thought was, oh my God, he's one of us. And then I also thought, holy crap, oh no, he's one of us. And that's just where I'm at. It's like, I don't know if this is going to go well, if this isn't. He's obviously inexperienced. He's not, super polished or anything. But you know what? He's got a lot of people jacked up. And I'm very, very excited to see how it goes because, in my opinion, that's the stuff that ASU doesn't do very well. Is connect with the community and get people excited and do the non-revenue stuff, and that seems to be what Kenny's all about. So I'm here for it. I'm excited to get back and get some excitement back in the program after a couple of not fun years and all of our opinions on the prior coach, but it's pretty promising and I'm very jacked up about it.
So there are quite a few big developments happening with Spaghetti Shack. I'm sure listeners would love to know about it so that they can support y'all. Tell us about what is up ahead in the future for Spaghetti Shack.
Yeah, a couple cool things on the table. Actually, today I'm just sitting here as we just opened our location up in Pine Top. My family spends a good amount of time up there, so we were able to open up a restaurant out there that just opened today. So that was really exciting. And then probably most importantly to the people on this call, I guess I'll drop the boom or I guess I should let Devil's Digest get this out. I'm just kidding. But we're opening a location on campus, so I'm very, very excited to be closer. I know we were in Tempe, but to be able to be on campus and around the games and around the students at the university is something that I can't tell you how proud and excited I am for it. So we're hoping to be open sometime in April. We've been working on it for a couple months now, but you know how the city process works. So in the very, very near future, we will be open on Apache and Rural. Underneath, the apartment buildings on there on ground floor retail. So very, very exciting times for the Spaghetti Shack. I just want to thank everybody who has supported us thus far. If you guys continue to support us, obviously we hope to grow and continue to support the program. So, I just feel very thankful and very excited for what's to come. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about my Sun Devil experience and my business.
Absolutely, my man. Now, before we get you out of here, how can everybody keep up with what's going on with the Spaghetti Shack through all the social media, online, that sort of thing? Give us the rundown where they can find you.
Yeah, if you want to get a hold of me and hear my, I guess they're over now, but my random get your butts to DFA tweets, you can follow me at Sun Devil Joey. Or if you want to follow our business, it's at The Spaghetti Shack on pretty much every social platform. Twitter is Spaghetti_Shack, but we're not very active on there. But again, at The Spaghetti Shack on Instagram is usually where we're at, or me personally at Sun Devil Joey.
All right, my man. Really great to catch up. Real fired up about the success that you've got going on. Happy to be a small part of it, and the future is bright, and we'll be right there for you, my man.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the time, and as always, go Devils.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guests, Kyle Dodd and Joey Palomarez. Make sure you are sticking with us on the social media side. There's a lot going on, a lot of different sports right now. So make sure that you're dialed in on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils, Facebook at facebook.com/SOTD Podcast, and give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BDenny29.
And you can follow me on all the things at Joe Healy 42. A huge shout out to our great sponsors. And as we talked about when we spoke with Joey, we're going to do our best to get folks from each one of our sponsors over the course of the next handful of weeks and months, just so you can kind of get an inside look at the people behind the businesses and why it is that we're doing business with them. And we're certainly grateful that they do so. You already heard about Spaghetti Shack and all the ways that you can catch up with them. Obviously, a huge thank you to the rest of the crew DeFalco's Deli, Cactus Sports, DevilsDigest.com, Jones Auto Group, and Sun Devil Family Charities. A big thank you to all. And as always, we strongly encourage all of our listeners and followers to follow those great folks and support them in any way that you can.
And once you're done supporting our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. And Joe and I will be back soon because spring football is almost here.